But I don't know as far as what the percentage in them.
On paper or through an ancestor.
I'm sure that there's some who probably have proof, and I'm sure there's some who don't have proof. But I don't know as far as what the percentage of that is.
I would say only 5 to 10% have proof.
Where are you? So I would ask, okay, 5 to 10%. Where are you basing? What are you basing this off of?
Okay, so I'm basing it off of when you do your research on Ancestry.com, not Ancestry.com, but Ancestry's YouTube channel, My Heritage. When the celebrities and other people go.
How can you base black people and how many black people have proof of their ancestry off of your ancestry?
No, not my ancestry. I'm saying, how people post their ancestry online, like in forums and on YouTube videos. That's how I'm basing it off. Based off the research, there's really no evidence of black people finding ancestry to a slave owner. The only evidence that you can find.
So you believe that there's no black person who has evidence that they have ancestry that ties them to a slave owner?
I was gonna respond to that, but as far as to a white slave owner, no.
And this is a fact?
It is a fact.
Okay, I'm unaware of this. So can you point me in the direction of the study or the research paper or the peer review that states that this is a fact?
Yes. So there's a thing called Free Negro 1830 Slave Census, where it states all the free Negro slave owners in 1830 census, and it was published by University of Illinois. It's a university in Illinois. I forgot which college it was, but you could search it up on Google right now. 1830 Free Negro Census, and it shows all the slave owners that were classified as free Negro in the 1830 census, and it names all the names. It records
3,000 people.
You're talking about that PDF, right?
The census, the 1830 census.
We're talking about the same census, right?
Yes.
Okay, yes. I'm talking about that one. I'm saying that...
you don't think 3,000 people is kind of low?
It could be more. It's just that's the only evidence we have right now, as far as it classifying it as black people own the slaves.
So you don't think other black people may have, as far as paperwork that proves as far as their lineage is connected with slavery?
Yes, but it's not through a white slave owner. It's through a Native American slave owner.
So you believe all the paperwork that black people have is connected to a Native American slave owner?
No. I'm saying that most black people, their ancestry is connected to a person who came to America. I'm not sure if it was from location, but most black people have ancestry that has an ancestor that immigrated to America. But as far as the ones that were owned by another slave owner, the ones that have evidence typically have a Cherokee or Choctaw or 5 civilized tribes freedmen role. But any other.
So you're under the belief that that black people, the majority of them were already here with the Indians?
Yes, we're part of the colonizations of America. Yes.
Gotcha. So then wouldn't you be entitled, this is an argument I still say, wouldn't you then be entitled to the Native American reparations?
Native Americans already got paid reparations.
I know. So
right.
That would be your reparations. You would have to go into the tribe and see if you can, get your citizenship.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So the black people that were owned by Native Americans, they would have to. That were owned by Native Americans and freed in 1866. They would have to get back reparations from the Native American tribe that they were owned by.
Got you. So you're saying because you're saying the only proof that exists regarding slavery links them to a Native American, not to a white slave owner. So then
white slave owner doesn't exist.
Then the argument for reparations wouldn't be with the United States. It would then be with the tribes.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
The 5 civilized tribes to be exact, because there's no evidence of the other tribes that weren't part of the 5 civilized that owned black slaves.
Okay. I haven't heard that one before. That's an interesting take.
Right, and the reason I came to your stream is because I hear this all the time. A lot of black people keep demanding reparations, but the problem is, if America was to give out reparations, a lot of whites would have to receive it too, because a lot of whites.
Why would a lot of whites have to receive it too?
Because many whites were slaves of America to the Europeans. Yes.
There were many whites who were slaves during the time of chattel slavery here in the United States?
Yes, to Europeans.
Oh, okay.
And that's why I brought up the free Negro slave owner census, because the truth is those European slave owners were actually black people.
Were they actual slaves or were they indentured servants?
They were actual slaves.
Gotcha.
So if you ever heard of the book White Cargo?
No, I haven't. The only slavery I'm aware of is the Barbary slave trade.
Right. The
But
Barbary slave
that
trade.
wasn't in the United States, though.
No, the transatlantic slave trade, when the African Barbary pirates sent Africans to the Americas, to Europeans, those slaves were not classified as Negro, but they weren't classified by a race. They were classified by their place they came from. So they didn't say Negro slave. They said African slaves. So because of movies and propaganda, we think that every single slave that came over here were Negro or so-called black person. But when you actually read the books of white historians looking into the slavery, they find out that it's actually the opposite. It's actually white Africans coming over from Africa as slaves to Europeans in the United States of America.
So you're telling me that the majority of those in the transatlantic slave trade were white?
Yes, the majority African slaves that came on the plantations of the United States of America, specifically the 13 colonies and the South, to Europeans, were white African slaves. But the ones that were Negro were sent to Native Americans. And I give you one evidence for that. There's a celebrity named Don Cheadle. I think you know who that is. He did his ancestry, and he found out through a freedman road that his ancestor was owned by I believe the Choctaw or Cherokee Nation.
Well, the problem that I've noticed in many cases, especially when it comes to white people talking about Barbary slave trade and everything, is that it wasn't the same context or framing as for black African slaves, right? Chattel slaves. White people were never chattel slavers. They were indentured servants. But it seems that many white people, especially in the book that you referenced, seem to interchange that terminology.
What it was
kind of like how the Irish say that they were slaves and they weren't actually slaves.
Yes, and I was going to respond to that. So the reason that a lot of people classify those white people as they classify white people or white slaves as indentured servants is because, like you said, we learned that a lot of Irish and Germans, Scottish came to America as indentured servants, and because we think that because now I might not be able to prove this part because
well, there is no proof of white people actually being chattel slaves. There's evidence of them being indentured servants.
No, so what I'm saying is, right, because we think of Irish and German, we think that it's classified as a specific phenotype or race, but so what I'm saying is those German and Irish indentured servants that we learned in school weren't actually a race. They were their own people. But because we classify them as white today, we think that those Irish and German and Scottish indentured servants were white people. But they could be of anyone, if that makes sense. So that's why a lot of people think when we bring up white slavery, they think it's applied to indentured servants from Ireland or Scotland or Germany.
Well, that's the only reference that they have. Even in the book that you're talking about, White Cargo, because I've heard of this book before, they conflate the two. There were never chattel slaves that were white or European. Now, could there have been, as far as anecdotal incidents of enslaved white people or indentured servants who were treated poorly or harshly? Yes. But as far as the systemic or the system of chattel slavery here in the country and how it was racialized, that never occurred to Europeans. It didn't even occur to the Native Americans.
Right, but you keep saying European. I mean, you keep saying European and
what
white.
Would they be?
And I'm saying that just because someone is white doesn't mean that they're European. That's what I'm trying to say.
Sure. What would they be? I don't understand.
So today in 2026, we call Europeans white. We call Africans black. During that time, they didn't call Europeans white. They didn't call Africans black.
So you're saying there were white Africans, like Afrikaners, in what we know as Africa?
Yes. Gotcha. Correct.
Where did they come from?
They came from South Africa, West Africa.
No, where did they come from Africa, right? Because they didn't originate in Africa, right? They must be migrants. Or are you saying that they're natives to South Africa? Or Africa in general?
Both South Africa and Africa in general.
So,
yes.
Gotcha. Where's the I guess the pale skin come from?
So the pale skin, that's a genetic mutation.
So they're mutants.
No, I'm not saying they're mutants. I'm saying that's classified as a genetic mutation.
So they would be mutants, right?
Not in a derogatory way, but they would.
Well,
they,
it would
I
be
mean,
a
they would have-
derogatory way, given that the majority of this country or the majority of the world has melanin. So someone who is lacking melanin, that would be considered a deficiency, right? A mutation. A mutation, from my understanding, is never considered in medicine a positive.
Right, but I'm not saying that them being pale is. I'm not trying to attack or
Well, it's an
just
abnormality.
saying-
That's what it would be considered.
Well, but you were telling me how did they lose pigmentation? I think you're bringing that up because
Well,
you
I'm just,
assume
no, I'm
that-
just asking because from my understanding,
okay.
I thought they originated from
Right.
Caucasoid mountains and whatnot. But you're saying that they originated in Africa and they just had a mutation, a genetic mutation that caused them to come out pale.
No, the gene they have is a genetic mutation, but in order to get
Where did that
skin color,
mutation originate from?
it originated from other genes. I didn't really want to get into that, but you
Well,
ever
what
heard of
genes?
SLC245?
Where did they come from?
Yeah.
Or is this kind of like
SLC245?
evolution, like it's just a big bang and it just happened? Like one day a person was just born white, two black people had a white baby.
Oh no, not that. It's based off who your ancestor mixed with, and
So in
as
order
far
for them
as,
to mix, right? Everyone at that time would be dark skinned in Africa, so they would have to
Oh, yeah.
mix with another dark
Yeah.
skin and then have a mutant baby.
So yes, but so you ever heard of leprosy, right?
Yeah, I've heard of leprosy.
Yes. So there were ancient tribes in the world that experienced leprosy,
Mhm.
and a lot of pale and lighter skinned races have ancestors that experienced leprosy in the past. And
Are you saying the
Yeah.
paleness comes from a mutation that was passed down from leprosy?
it could be two ways. It could be through leprosy or mixing with an ancestor that contained the so the science so leprosy.
Wouldn't that
that's
make them
referring
a
to-
cursed group of people?
Well, that's what I was trying to say. So leprosy would refer to the Bible, right?
Uh-huh.
But science, it will be classified as mixing with a human that has SLC245 gene. You ever heard of the SLC245 gene?
No, I haven't. Where'd that gene come from?
It came from a humanoid ancestor.
A non-humanoid ancestor?
Yeah, so like it's classified as a gene from zebrafish.
So you're telling me a human had sex with a zebrafish?
No, a Homo sapien mixed with another humanoid that contained SLC245 and within the gene pool.
How
And
did it get into the gene pool? I don't understand. How did they get
That's
a
what-
zebrafish gene as a Homo sapien?
So remember they said that sub-Saharan Africans or Homo sapiens mixed with Neanderthals and Dinovision people. That's what happened. And when you keep mixing from generations to generations, it can change the genetics of the offspring.
So it somehow changed it to have zebrafish DNA?
It's a small percentage, but yes, but that's just part of the gene that they had to evolve to have lighter skin, and it's not just
But that wouldn't be
within
evolution. That'd be
white people.
wouldn't that be devolution? Kind of? Because it's a mutation. That makes it an abnormality. It
I
would
mean,
make
it
them a
would-
cursed group
yeah,
of people. That's what you're saying. That this would be a cursed race of people.
I mean, if you classify it, yes, it would, but it's a lot of cursed groups of races of people on the planet.
How are there a lot of cursed groups of races of people on the planet?
Because humans started out as one type,
Uh-huh.
the first man, the first woman.
So essentially, everyone who is
yeah.
non-melanated would be considered a part of that cursed race.
No, not necessarily.
Why is that?
Because first humans is bigger concept story, but like humans start off with a smooth skin, taller, symmetrical faces, et cetera, right? I'm not
Mhm.
trying to sound like one of those look smackers. I'm just talking about
I get
like
you, physiology and all that. I got
humans,
you.
right? Humans started off more perfect, and when we, ended up, biblically not following the Most High, right?
Mm.
It ended up corrupting our, genes and causing us to, what's the word?
Mutate?
Degenerate or mutate. But according to the Bible, there's a certain group of people. I don't know if you believe in that. That descend from so-called, Israelites and stuff
Mhm.
like that, or that have supposedly the perfect so-called human DNA, and then scientifically, it's only a small percent. Most people today have, a somewhat good gene and somewhat bad genes, but it's also like a small percentage of people today that supposedly have the perfect DNA today. But but yeah, but like, back to the other point, if you, I guess, want me to explain about slavery again.
I get what you're saying. The zebra DNA that then led to them being here in the country. Even though like I said, I'm
No,
unaware.
that has nothing to deal with
No, I mean it has to deal with it because it has to deal with the slavery, right? Because the whole premise was that what we actually think of the slaves is actually they're not black, they were actually white.
Yes, they were white. Yes.
Yeah, I just haven't come across any information that's
Right,
said
and I gave you a book, and It's called White Cargo.
I'm
The
aware of White
Forgotten
Cargo, but
History.
that book is heavily
Yep.
criticized due to the fact that it supplants slavery, a slave for indentured servant.
Okay. We got they were white and they were slaves. The Untold History of the Enslavement of Whites in
Yeah, that's
Early
the
America.
Barbary slave trade. I'm aware of that book.
Right. I'm just giving you
But even
evidence
still,
that
they weren't
yes.
slaves, right? They weren't slaves in the same capacity as black people here in the States.
Okay. So
It
and
surely
I'm gonna
wasn't
go ahead.
racialized.
Right. I'm gonna challenge that right quick. So if you look at a lot of statistics in America, right?
Mm-hmm.
The poor areas, and I'm mainly talking about the highest populated areas like California, Georgia, Florida, New York. Typically, the poor rural areas are mostly of people of the white descent or white race, right? And if
The
you
poor
descend
rural
from
areas. What area? Can you give me an example?
right, so if
In
you
California?
yeah, so like California, the I'm specifically talking about the highest populated states in the United States, like California,
Mm-hmm.
New York, Georgia, Florida. Those areas, the rural areas, or it doesn't really have to be the rural areas, but the poorest areas of California and Georgia,
Mm-hmm.
they're typically going to be whites in that area.
The poorest areas in Georgia, predominantly black state, you're telling me it is white people.
Yes,
Is
in
this
California
per
and Florida,
capita? Are we taking into population?
both.
Both. You mean per capita? The poorest areas are white in Georgia and in California?
Pretty much all of America, yes.
All of America? Now, this is the first time hearing this because maybe the data I have is outdated. The last time I saw it. Where are you getting your
Yeah.
data from? CDC?
Okay,
Any government website?
You said how am I classifying my data?
Like, where are you getting this from? I haven't heard this before. That's what I'm saying. I must be on outdated sources.
Yeah, so if you type on Google, right,
Mm-hmm.
what are the poorest areas? What races are in the poorest areas in Georgia? It's going to state whites are in those areas.
So Google is
Yeah.
not a source, right? Google shows you other sources. And
Okay.
I don't know what your Google may be onto something else, but my Google says,
Right.
based on the recent data, the poorest areas in Georgia are disproportionately populated by black or African residents.
Okay, let me type it right quick. Well, actually, I'm on your show site. I'm not gonna do. I mean, I'm not gonna hold up time like that. But but also through my own research, I was just giving you through Googling what you wouldn't consider the best source, right?
Mm.
But as far as through my own research, when you type on YouTube or TikTok, through sites where most Americans are on, and you type the poor areas or EBT or everyday struggle, and like a state specifically like Georgia, Florida, it's going to usually show white people in those videos.
Gotcha.
You're rarely, yes, but that's not, I guess, what you would want to I guess see as a source.
Yeah, I don't think that
So
would classify
that might not be
as
really-
evidence
yeah.
per se, right? That would be more of anecdotal.
Okay. Yeah, but that's the evidence I would give. But as far as like a source, that's probably not the source I could provide.
Okay.
But I know it's true. But and also the other point, most black people live in suburban areas, specifically in the South, the East, right? And if you're a descendant of a slave, you're going to be struggling financially today, and have like a 400-year back start. So you should be poor today, or struggling today. And I'm saying a lot of black people today are not struggling. A lot of black people live in suburban communities like Atlanta, out metro or outside parts of Atlanta, Macon, Georgia, Los Angeles, New York City, Raleigh, North Carolina. And yes, there are some poor black areas too, but that's why I was bringing up earlier. There were black people owned by Native Americans.
So that kind of fits in with the whole white people being slaves due to the fact that they're, they make up the majority of the poverty, and black people are doing fairly well in suburban areas. Kind of a systemic problem.
Right.
Gotcha.
So, and this might sound, very, coonish, but I have to say it. But a lot of issues in the so-called black diaspora in the United States, a lot of issues is caused by a lot of black people too. because there were black people that owned other black people on plantations too, but not as slaves, more like indentured service, and that's what I was talking about earlier. You had black people work for other black people, and you know, it kind of applies today. Black people want say they support the black community, they support black businesses, they support black unity, but don't put a lot of, money. And I'm not speaking for all black people, but I live in a black community, right?
Mm.
I'm from Georgia, by the way. But there's there's not, like, black people are not trying to, I guess, become equal through finance and success. Everybody wants to do that in, through their own individual way of works. So individualism. And that's, I guess, why, like, we supposedly have issues in the black community. And the reason I'm struggling to say this part is because black suburban people don't really have that issue. It's more, the black people that are in the projects and hoods. So I'm saying the black people in the projects and the hoods, they're being oppressed by black, suburban and upper class people.
Gotcha.
Because that's what I'm trying to say.
Gotcha.
While being oppressed by whites in a specific way, which is through brainwash of the school system. But I'm saying that the upper class blacks, the black elites, are also part of the oppression too. Because the truth is, those blacks are descendants of people that watched other blacks get enslaved by Native Americans, and other blacks be indentured to other black people. Like my great grandfather was, But yeah, I appreciate you for accepting my my talks. I am kind of nervous because my information is not really. It's kind of new. It's new, but it's most people are in my.
Appreciate the call, man. Appreciate the knowledge.
On Alabama, and was indentured to another black landowner.
Gotcha.
So
appreciate the call, man. Appreciate the knowledge.
I appreciate you for accepting my information. Is not real. Pretty sure I'm getting taught. New is new, but it's most people are not going to believe it. I'm pretty sure I'm getting taught.
Yeah, it's just a lot. It's a lot to take in all at one time.
Right.
Pause.
Right,
but yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, but I'm serious, man. There was no, so there were black indentured servants, Negro slaves, but there were no black man owned by a white man. That does not exist. That has never existed in America ever. There would be no black Mecca of Atlanta, Memphis. There's successful black communities in Florida, New York. There would be no Negro Baseball League, HBCU, First African Baptist Church, Methodist Church. There would be none of that if we were if black Americans were slaves. All that would not exist if we were slaves.
Gotcha.
That's the truth.
Hey,
I appreciate you for
appreciate you being bold enough to to speak the truth.
Yes.